Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, CM Punk. Like them or not, these are three of the WWE's biggest stars right now. Three guys who nearly always get a pop. Bar maybe Rollins, that one time last year.
My little brother Seth Rollins. Exactly, no pop.
All three are former world champions, with Reigns and Punk cruising past the year mark in individual runs. Triple Nose has entrusted them to close out the first night of this year's WrestleMania. And while all three are very over, the stakes of this bout are a bit wonky, to put it politely. Most triple threats in WrestleMania history have had the benefit of a title up for grabs, a logical bit of stakes for everyone to compete for. Last time a WrestleMania triple threat with nothing proper on the line happened was Randy Orton versus Cody Rhodes versus Ted DiBiase, the legacy fallout at WrestleMania 26. And it was a dismal conclusion to that angle that severely damaged both Rhodes and DiBiase at the time. Fortunately, both men bounced back. Rhodes with a second win in wrestling, DiBiase with organized crime. Anyways, obviously, this match will likely be a bit better, given all three performers are on a similar level kayfabe-wise and it's getting the main event treatment. The stakes here, it's not a future world title bout. It's not even just something insultingly basic like proving who's the best. The stakes here are very simple. Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman is making these three look ridiculous. Punk and Reigns are essentially the Hogan and Savage to Heyman's Miss Elizabeth, as these top guys angrily fight over their love for a weeping, rotund slimeball has-been manager and booker. For months, fans wondered what the favour Heyman owed Punk would be. Lots of build-up, lots of interest. You had fantasy booking of stuff like CM Punk being inserted into a world title bout and all sorts. Instead, Punk's measly waste of a favour is that Heyman will corner him at WrestleMania instead of Roman Reigns. A moment that made Reigns look unhealthily obsessed with Heyman, completely going against the cool guy, top guy vibe he's normally meant to give off. Seth Rollins now is also claiming Heyman owes him a favour or something, and a good chunk of the feud has revolved around Heyman's never-ending promos about this situation. This is awful, awful television. And it's not the fault of the wrestlers, just to be clear. It is the fault of the booking, and, Heyman himself. Many people, fans, pundits, performers in the actual industry over the years have carried on like Paul Heyman is this GOAT-tier promo, the best manager of this millennium. Right. Let me tell you something. 9 times out of 10, if you've seen one Paul Heyman promo, you've just about seen them all. Almost every single time. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Paul Heyman.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't care.
Couple of lame jokes sprinkled in through a long-winded, whiny-voiced rant about whoever he's representing and how they're going to destroy whoever they're feuding with that month. Creepy smile, a few odd upwards inflections in his speech patterns, rinse and repeat. Every once in a while, when pushed to, he'll change it up and give us Sad Heyman, which involves him being called a genius for not shaving for a day or two and adopting a sad guy voice, a hammy one. The kind of thing you might see in a bad Shakespeare production. And post-2010, so many promos in WWE have been so scripted, so lifeless, just sterile dreck from uncharismatic performers, that the moment someone puts that little extra effort in, they're the king of the hill. Now, the main job of a manager, I'm sure this goes without saying, is to get the talent they're representing more over with the audience. It's about propping up the actual wrestler in question. So, with that in mind, just looking at his comeback in 2012 to now, not counting the noughties, how many talents has he gotten over? Brock Lesnar is, or maybe at this point was, a superstar. When he came back to WWE in 2012, it was a big deal. He was coming off a big box office run in the UFC. Now his return promos were a bit awkward, due to needless WWE scripting and micromanagement. So Heyman was brought back to reunite their double act from all the way back in 2002. Heyman was a crutch this time, so that Lesnar didn't have to do PG WWE's just awful dialogue. And that decision very quickly turned the big man into a dumb man, a big dumb monster, a shoot-fighter mute, who largely did high-pitched screams and not much else verbally. As we saw in 2021, right up until that Cody Rhodes feud in 2023, Brock Lesnar is actually a solid promo when he's allowed to just be himself and do his thing. If anything, Heyman was a creative anchor for the Beast throughout much of his part-time run. CM Punk is beloved by many hardcore smart-type fans and has been for years. He's also, while not necessarily the biggest of draws, liked and respected enough by casuals to carry some name value and appeal. In 2011, he briefly, very briefly, set the wrestling world on fire with his infamous pipe bomb promo. By 2012, WWE had successfully ruined and cooled that off completely, but Punk was still over, and more importantly, enjoying a lengthy WWE title reign. Almost none of his defenses were the main event, but hey, title run's a title run, better than nothing. Renowned for his promo ability, Punk never needed a mouthpiece. When he turned heel, on The Rock no less, a big deal heel turn, Punk was saddled with Heyman to eat up some of his own mic time, and perform dismal skits, like making fun of Jerry Lawler's heart attack around that time. Beyond making clear Punk was now a no-good, dirty, rotten heel by associating with a heel manager, this did nothing for CM Punk. It did not get him more over than he already was, and frankly, most fans don't care that these two hit it off when Punk was in developmental back in 2005 or whenever. Roman Reigns. Dismal flop as a babyface leading man, just awful. However, he basically saved WWE this decade when he came back as a heel and gave fans something worth watching again as restrictions back in 2021 began to lift fully. Late 2020, the only watchable thing in the Thunderdome or the Superdome, whatever the hell it was called. Heel Roman Reigns, he's feud with Jey Uso, very good. Now, initially, Paul Heyman did add something to this character, and he helped to make clear that Reigns was now a different, darker guy than his cringe merchant Big Dog days. That being said, as the bloodline grew into wrestling's #1 faction, Heyman began taking more of a backseat, and just became Reigns' cheerleader and belt holder for a large portion of his big, 3-year-plus title run. None of these guys ascended to new heights specifically because of Heyman being by their side, and Reigns is the only one here who truly benefited for a while from Heyman's presence. Alright, so let's leave the main event boys at the door. How about lesser talent Heyman has managed since he came back all the way back in 2012? Alright, let's see. 2014. Cesaro. He connects with fans. He's not all that charismatic, to be honest, but his ring work is exceptional with a variety of strongman spots that get big pops from impressed audiences. It's clear crowds want to support a babyface Cesaro, and at WrestleMania 30, it appears they might get their wish when the Swiss guy wins the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. He has the huge moment of body slamming Big Show over the top rope. Big pop, everyone's into it. Sky's the limit, this is looking very promising. Instead, the next night on Raw, he reveals himself to be a Paul Heyman guy now. And Heyman spends the next couple of months talking exclusively about an absent Brock Lesnar ending The Undertaker's WrestleMania streak that year. The Cesaro-Heyman partnership ends just in time for Lesnar gearing up to come back. Heyman and Cesaro split. Cesaro no longer has that fan connection he enjoyed earlier in the year, and spends the rest of 2014 in jobber purgatory until that long-awaited face turn finally landed in 2015. Go back a year earlier, 2013. Curtis Axel. Now, Kurt Hennig was a truly outstanding wrestler in his day. Huge bumper and seller, solid, confident promo, amazing bell-to-bell in-ring technique and psychology, especially before his unfortunate back injury. His matches with guys like Nick Buckwinkle and Bret Hart are masterful. Sadly, unfortunately, talent is not always genetically transmitted. Curtis Axel was a charisma vacuum and a strictly mid, at best, if we want to be generous, in-ring performer. But WWE, they love themselves a good Nepo baby. They gave him Paul Heyman. They gave him the Intercontinental Championship, and they even gave him some singles matches with Triple H back in 2013. For Heyman's feud with CM Punk that year, Axel was merely a chess piece, a human prop to waste time and extend the program after Lesnar beat Punk at SummerSlam and decided shooting a Sasquatch or something was more important than running a rematch. Axel was certainly not a star beforehand, but his association with Heyman firmly established him as a nothing undercard act, who was quickly and quietly moved down the card in the fall of that same year. Now, Heyman upgraded from Axel in 2013 to a considerably more jacked client in Ryback. Rybatch is a laughingstock these days, a delusional nutcase who rarely gets off his couch and films himself eating junk food on YouTube. Back in 2012, however, hilarious as it is to think now, despite being a botch machine and a blatant Goldberg ripoff, babyface Ryback enjoyed a surprisingly large amount of fan support. And in 2012, WWE, you see, they had a very unfortunate problem. They were allergic to making new stars. So Ryback repeatedly jobbed at every pay-per-view he worked to cool him off, because how dare anyone new get even moderately over with live crowds? By 2013, by the time he starts getting involved in the Paul Heyman stuff, he was far from the big boy powerhouse he'd been brought in as. Ryback was now a goofy heel, a bully, a soft, PG parody almost of Bully Ray over in TNA at the time, throwing food in Ricky Starks' face and trying to pull off leather vests. He was injected into the Punk-Heyman feud, where he succeeded admirably in endangering Punk's safety with idiotic butchers and having a surprisingly homoerotic dynamic with Heyman. Ryback, who was already on a downward swing, came out of that feud looking like a joke. He never recovered as a heel or face. Him and Axel even formed a jobber tag team, basically sending up what nobodies they'd become following their brief associations with Heyman. Now, in Kayfabe, which in a sane wrestling world is what takes emphasis on TV over real-life shoots, why exactly does CM Punk love Paul Heyman so much? That original time he managed Punk ended in betrayal, an angle that's been run with Heyman with almost every person he's managed. Punk went full heel as champ. He joined forces with Paul Heyman in 2012, during which time he lived in fear of John Cena and Ryback. Had his record-setting title run ended by The Rock, who beat him in back-to-back pay-per-views, lost to The Undertaker at WrestleMania, and then had to take a break because it was all just getting a bit too much for him. Just looking at this from kayfabe, no reality, this is awful management. Under Paul Heyman, a once dominant babyface champion with crowd support became a broken-down heel mess who fell out with the fans, which probably hindered his merchandise sales, and had a nervous breakdown after some part-timers whooped him one too many times. And when Punk came back, he clearly, to a certain degree, realized this in kayfabe, because he informs Heyman he'd prefer to go to the ring alone, moving forwards. It's a simple request, and he says it very politely. So what's Heyman's response? Send Brock Lesnar to beat CM Punk up, and also personally cost him the Money in the Bank ladder match that year. Great. Astonishing. And we must ask ourselves, which is the bigger problem when we bring stuff like this up? This is very important. The grumpy smirks who demand long-term continuity, or lazy bookers who expect everyone to be too dumb to think critically or logically about the narrative unfolding in front of them. Both are quite bad, I suppose. Now, there'll be some who will jump to Paul Heyman's defense, and beyond complimenting his promo style, they'll more importantly say he's a genius booker. Okay, let's look at that. ECW. Paul Heyman did not have the budget of a WWF or a WCW to pick up top dog talent and enjoy a primetime TV slot back in the 90s. To make up for that, he relied heavily on shock value, cranking up the extremes, no pun intended, of the ring, having talents go through a whole host of mutilation to the joy of rowdy drunk crowds. Story-wise, same deal, love triangles, cuckold angles, homewrecker angles, a crucifixion angle that deeply upset Kurt Angle, Rhino repeatedly demolishing the Sandman's wife. The list goes on. It was car crash TV, and obviously, yes, there is a big market for that. But you get some historians out there who carry on like this was genius storytelling, and not just bloodthirsty desperation to stay in the game, while the other two main promotions in the States were giants. The WWF wound up taking ECW's style and refining it into the Attitude Era, which, frankly, was better. Which is saying a lot, because outside of the main event scene, much of the Attitude Era has aged horribly. Heyman's booking for WWE SmackDown, just to fast forward a bit, in late 2002 and early 2003 was very solid overall, carried by the insane work rate of the SmackDown 6, as well as the main event presence of guys like Brock Lesnar and The Undertaker at the time. And even then, top stars like Lesnar and Kurt Angle flip-flopped between face and heel a lot in quick order. The Big Show, the king of the flip-flop, randomly got a WWE title reign for a month when he was at his laziest, and Lesnar versus Undertaker, a huge feud at the time in theory, devolved into a bizarre soap opera angle concerning Undertaker maybe cheating on his pregnant wife Sarah at the time. He wasn't, just to be clear, we're still a few years away from Michelle McCool at this point. It's always, time and again, cheap, lowest common denominator storytelling for the quick heat and the short-term eyes. So fast forward all the way to 2019. Heyman gets a neat little promotion behind the scenes, very good. Executive Director of Raw, nice, good paycheck I imagine. Part of the post involves overseeing much of the show's creative. It's a big responsibility. So did WWE Raw become amazing under his esteemed watch? Let's see, once again. What are the odds? Cuckold angles. Not only is Lana riding Bobby Lashley while she's got Rusev at home, but we don't know who knocked Maria Kanellis up. Just that it probably wasn't her husband Mike. Brilliant! Has anyone figured out what might be Heyman's fetish yet? There was also the absolute worst Elimination Chamber match of all time, 2020. One of the last events before lockdown sent audiences home and ruined everyone's lives. A women's chamber match. I know, already you're looking for that remote, of course you were. But this gets even worse. It's just Shayna Baszler, a zero charisma, frankly, second-rate MMA fighter, who's buddy-buddy with Ronda Rousey, eliminating each competitor one at a time with her little chokehold. Now I'm sure she could beat any one of these women up for real. In reality, one-on-one, maybe two-on-one. That's cool, tough lady, sure. Boring as hell though, and that's what really is the big issue. Where, oh where, were the "we want refunds" chants when you needed them? Raw absolutely sucked under this guy's watch, and for some reason, more than the fans, it's AJ Styles who is still bitter about it. Awful. So to sum up, so I can go and have a nap. You see, it's crunch time at work lately. This happens sometimes. I'm doing extra hours. It's exhausting. I have bigger responsibilities than usual. Pure wagey life, of course. When you reach my age, that's all there is. ECW has had a horrid influence on professional wrestling. So many subpar talents cutting themselves open, eating glass, relying on hardcore horror to garner attention. Not so much in WWE, in fairness, where there are stricter rules in place, but elsewhere, all over the indies, for a mere hot dog and a handshake, you have people like Joey Janela catching fire and having hot rods stuck through their face and goodness knows what else. And beyond the ring, much of the promotion's history revolves around jolly old Paul failing to even pay his employees properly. Shameful, allegedly. So just picture that. Picture you worked for ECW in 1999 or something. You're cut up because you've been falling on glass for 15 minutes. You need to be sewed back together because you're bleeding everywhere. You need to be looked at for your concussion because you fell off a platform directly onto concrete. Why you thought that was a good idea is anyone's guess. Now, your original paycheck you agreed to for this show would not have covered the hospital bills. Unfortunately, it gets worse though, because the check bounces anyway. Imagine that, you got no money. And for those who want to be reasonable and suggest maybe Heyman's cheapskatery and dishonesty, his reputation for both things, has been blown way out of proportion, let's just remember it got so bad that long-time ECW loyalist Tommy Dreamer was planning to whack Heyman for revenge at WrestleMania 17. That's how bad it was. That's how cheated talent were feeling. That one of ECW's main guys, a guy who put his whole body and time and effort into the promotion, completely lost his mind and was preparing to go full Travis Bickle for a quick second there. Now look, as a character, sure, he is a strong talker. To say he's a bad promo would be absurd, but his material is repetitive, and he frequently runs through a selection of tropes and a promo structure that gets very repetitive when you're seeing him week to week. And finally, he's the center of attention in one of the WWE's biggest feuds right now, a feud that is making 3 popular main eventers look like sensitive children fighting for his affection. Far from elevating anyone in this feud, Heyman's a key part of why they're all looking actively ridiculous right now, heading into WrestleMania. Bad for business, there you go, that's the conclusion. Especially in the here and now.